speaking here on behalf of those of us in the West in independent media who are prematurely correct. We were wrongly correct. We were right before it was allowed. We were right that CNN was lying when they put up on a chyron that 40 babies had been beheaded by Hamas. We were right when right-wing Zionist journalists started claiming that Hamas had baked babies in ovens on October 7th, citing fraudulent rescue organizations like Zaka and United Hatzalah. We were right when we called out the New York Times for its phony front-page investigation claiming that Palestinian resistance groups on October 7th committed mass rape against Jewish women. They never produced any survivors. They never produced any forensic evidence. They never produced any credible police investigations. They never produced anything to the point where they had to change the entire definition. And the New York Times never even corrected its piece when virtually all of its eyewitnesses were proven to be frauds. What they do correct, though, and issue a clarification on, is that an emaciated child, Mohammed Zakaria al-Mutawak, who is living in a tent with his mother, whose father was killed on the beach in Gaza City, who suffers from a muscular condition, who cannot get enough milk, which worsens his muscle condition. They issued a correction noting that that child had a pre-existing condition, caving to Zionists who accused the New York Times of an anti-Semitic blood libel for showing that child on the front page. Because what? What? We're supposed to accept the death of the Untermenschen? That's what they're claiming, and the New York Times caves to them, but made no correction on any of these phony investigations which we exposed. We also exposed Israel's killing of hundreds of its own citizens on October 7th through the Hannibal Directive. And for these exposés, for being prematurely correct, we at the Grayzone were attacked not once, but twice in feature-length articles by the billionaire-owned Washington Post, which falsely accused us of being funded by Russia and Iran. The Washington Post is an enemy of the people. And we were attacked by Haaretz, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times, the supposed voice of the liberal, enlightened, peace-loving public of Israel. For being prematurely right, then what did Haaretz do? They turn around and declare, oh, wait a minute, we have uncovered copious evidence that Israel fired on dozens and dozens of vehicles on October 7th containing Jewish Israeli citizens, and that it had free fire orders to open fire everywhere and actually enacted a mass Hannibal Directive. But they never said the independent media was right. No. Why was this? How can we understand this dynamic? What was taking place in the days and the weeks and the months after October 7th was the media was fulfilling its traditional role, the corporate media, in manufacturing consent for genocide, in manufacturing consent for war. And once they had finally gotten the public to go along with it, or to shut down, or to be afraid of challenging their lies, and the Israeli genocide machine was cranked into full gear, destroying northern Gaza, pushing the population south, moving into Rafah for that destruction, and we were warning, this is a genocide, full Auschwitz is coming next. Then they could start admitting that some of the narratives that they had spun out were incorrect, because the damage had already been done. It is always that way with the corporate media and their retroactive morality. And that's why they and the members of the Democratic Party are now finally starting to acknowledge that Israel might be doing some Nazi-like things in Gaza, like deliberately starving people to death. But they're barely even acknowledging that. Look at this New York Times headline from last month. Gaza residents are starving. They're just hungry. I don't know who could possibly be starving them. It's just like the headline that they pumped out in January 2024. Violence breaks out at Gaza aid site. That's where Israel massacred dozens of people seeking flour at an aid site in northern Gaza. They've been starving people for months and years now. Oh, violence just broke out. It was like a Jerry Springer show. Let's bring out the bodyguards because the DNA test showed that the baby's daddy was actually not the husband. The New York Times has referred to schools that were bombed housing war refugees as ex-schools, like the school transitioned, like it's not a school anymore, and its new pronouns are Hamas Command and Control Center. Don't dead name the school. This is the ridiculous language that we have come to expect from a newspaper that is mobbed up with hardcore Zionists, including its executive editor, Joe Kahn, whose father was a member of Camera, the Israel lobby censorship group. Not one, not two, not three, but four current and recent members of the New York Times team in the Jerusalem bureau had children in the Israeli army. Ethan Bronner, Isabel Kirshner, the current bureau chief, Myra Novak, and then David Brooks, the columnist. David Brooks' son participated in the pilot program for this genocide in 2014. Can you imagine if, I don't know, a Palestinian journalist at the New York Times had a child who was in the resistance, what would happen to them? They'd be out the door so fast, they would never work again. But these people are proud of it. And where do they work in Jerusalem? They work in the ethnically cleansed home of Hassan Karmi, who ran the BBC's Arabic news service and was kicked out of his home at gunpoint in the Kadamon quarter of Jerusalem by Zionist militias. That home was purchased by Thomas Friedman, the New York Times columnist, in the 1980s. They literally work out of an ethnically cleansed home. And that's not a scandal? The media has fulfilled its role. The corporate media has fulfilled its role as an enemy of the people and an ally of the military, industrial complex, and the national security state. Their traditional role is whenever they care about humanitarian suffering in another country like Libya or Syria or Ukraine, it's because they want us to wage war on an official enemy. And so we saw them in Libya crank up lies about Gaddafi's forces being given Viagra to commit mass rape against the opposition in order to get NATO into military action to destroy an African country, destabilize a region, cause a migrant crisis, and destabilize the whole Sahel. Same thing in Syria. CNN even sent a reporter, Arwa Damon, to a refugee camp to sniff a backpack to prove that a chemical attack had occurred in order to trigger US and British military action. But the backpack sniffers and the liars and the stenographers for power have been an essential part of the Holocaust of our time. And now we see that what's happening in Gaza, the killing of probably hundreds of thousands. We're going to find out that there are hundreds of thousands of excess deaths if this ever ends, because now Israel's talking about fully occupying Gaza. We're going to find out that this is a Holocaust worse than we ever imagined. And they have been an important part of manufacturing consent. What we are witnessing and what we all know is that this is actually a textbook case for military intervention. That this is the time to bomb the railways to Auschwitz. This catastrophe, this nightmare, this Holocaust, this genocide truly demands military intervention, and the media is just sitting on its hands. They don't even want to go in. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is the logical, predictable outcome of so many responsibility to protect humanitarian interventionist frauds that have been perpetrated by the media. That's what this is. It's just another humanitarian fraud designed to cause death, which is backed by the CIA and the Mossad. A literal CIA agent, Phil Riley, is running this. And Phil Riley should be subjected to Nuremberg 2.0 if he's ever found. But the media, what they should be doing now, how they could actually recover their reputation, is they should go to Rafah, set up media tents, get out of their air-conditioned offices, and demand entry to Gaza. Because I was just in touch with a doctor. Yes, I was just in touch with a doctor from Gaza yesterday, and you know what he told me, which is so depressing? He said, we need to get some reporters in there, but not Arabs or Muslims, because no one believes us. No one believes the heroes of our time who have been targeted by Israeli drones and assassination death squads, who have had their heads literally blown off while doing their jobs. And so it's up to them, and they're failing on the job. If they were in Gaza now, there is no way they would be able to ignore what we see, and it would shut this whole operation down. And you know why I think they're not doing it? Because when you shut this genocide down, you start to set Israel on a path to its own destruction, because as Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli leadership have clearly said, this assault on Gaza is existential for them. And so they will keep it going for as long as possible until we intervene. Julian Assange asked, what is the average death count of the typical Western journalist? And that's the death count that we'll learn from Gaza for Fox News, for NBC News, for CNN, for the Washington Post, for the New York Times, and all of these enemies of the people. Shame on them for shame, 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 shame.